Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this week's edition of Bookbytes. It's been a beautifully sunny weekend. I think we've had great weather and there's a lot happening on the literary scene as well. I'm introducing a very interesting novel this weekend. It's called Kismet by local author Waheeda Joosab, who we'll be speaking to in a little while. Waheeda Joosab is a Durban-based author. She's an educator and psychological counselor, director of Educator Wellness SA, an enterprise that advocates for the holistic well-being of teachers. Waheeda also sustains an award-winning blog called What Waheeda Says, where she shares resources to help women thrive in mentality and spirituality. Kismet for Roses to Blossom is her first book. The book has recently been nominated for and won Best Young Adult or New Adult Romance Book in the Keys Book Awards based in the USA. There's some, future great news ahead with this novel. We wish all good things for readers and with the traction of this novel. And inshallah, I'm very, very blessed and happy to introduce Waheeda Joosab to the show this evening. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Book Bites.
Salam, Shafinaaz. Thank you for having me.
We had a slight lag there, but great to have you on the
Okay.
show finally after having read through Kismet. So tell us about, to get right in, tell us about your process. Where did this all begin for you?
Kismet for me was my therapeutic project. It began many, many years ago. It wasn't written overnight. Um, my son, who's now 8 years old, so when he was born, I went through some postnatal depression. Shafinaz, I had studied it. I've got honors in psychology. I knew exactly what was happening in my mind, but it was so difficult for me to snap out of it. And for me, writing was my outlet. Alhamdulillah, I started the storyline at that point when he was a few months old. And it was basically just for me to let some creative juices flow and get my mind off everything else that was bothering me at that point. And as the best things in life, when we have something to share, we share it with our mother first. And so that's what I did. I typed off some, a storyline that had been playing in my mind. I typed it on the notepad of my phone, and via WhatsApp, I sent it to my mother, and she was all very thrilled about it. And she'd, call me back and say, "Well, I need to know what happens next." And I think that's where it started. That's where the whole story started coming together. So it was about 8 years ago that it happened. And Alhamdulillah, through a very long, arduous journey, it was published in February this year. So Alhamdulillah, this year has, was the culmination of all of those processes. So that's where it actually began.
Well, congratulations. To finally have a book out is a very exciting thing, especially when you've labored through it for so many years. And it's great that you had feedback from your mom, and also motivation to continue writing the story. I like what you said, about it being sort of a therapeutic project. We talk about writing as a healing project. So I'm going to pick your brain a little about that.
Okay.
Tell us more about it because you've got the background of, the healing journey and your personal experience. Tell us a bit more about writing as a form of therapy, as a form of release in a way, even if it's not memoir style, but, even in fiction form, how that felt for you and what your thoughts are on this process.
I've got my teachers from primary school and high school to thank for that, because I've always been the kind of note taker and, writing poems, very short poems and little texts and short stories. And I remember particularly in grade 10, I had a Mr. Thomas who was my English teacher, and he was very encouraging about some of the silly things that I would say silly now, but I mean, he was very encouraging, and he, said you need to keep writing, and it'll lead you somewhere at some point. And then similarly in matric, I had a Mrs. Umar who had a similar effect on me. And so I kept it up, I think, through the years. Writing has always been something that I eventually reverted towards. And so in my time of need, can I say, during those postpartum days, It was my second baby. I didn't really expect to go, completely spiral downwards. I thought I would, I thought I had things under control, but for some reason, we don't know why it happens. Um, it was something that I again started to do. And Shafina's, that version of the book, nobody sees, as you know, nobody sees your first version, your first draft of the book, right? Nobody sees that part. And I had written all my woes and all my depression into the book, and so it was a very somber read at the beginning. And over the years I did fix it up and remove some of it. um, but I think having that outlet to use, and having that platform, it was very personal to me, the entire journey. Having that, alhamdulillah, we make shukr for having that, because it really got me out of my my very low moods, and it allowed me to, obviously the first step was to get things down and feel that a sense of accomplishment, in that I have, if I accomplish nothing else today, at least I got a few words down. So that really helped. And then I think the dream of it one day becoming more really, it put me in a very positive mental space. At that point, I didn't know what more it would become, but the idea that it could become more put me in a positive mental space. And so, in that way, I encourage people to journal in some way. For me, this was my way of journaling. I'm not one to put my own personal thoughts down, and a dear diary kind of thing that they taught us to do in school, and we teach kids to do in school today. That's not really me. But I mean, to get my ideas down really helped. And I think writing, as you say, such a lovely mental stimulation. It gets your adrenaline flowing, it gets your, it really heightens your mood. So alhamdulillah, that's what happened to me. And so that's the reason I also encourage people just to get things on. Even if you're not a writer, but you have some problems, or you're going through something, just write it down, make a list. It doesn't have to be a big paragraph, just make a list. And just the idea of seeing it on paper already gives you so much of clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate listening to your process because it is empowering, and you actually believe in yourself enough to put it down, even if you're not sure that it's going to make it to the public arena or to the public space yet. That first step is so important. So I really
That's
appreciated that share. Thank you. And then, to take it further into now the characters that you've created for Kismet, let's go into that. Because you have a great feel for your characters, a sense of what they're thinking, and obviously over the years you've honed these characters, you've gotten to know them intimately, and it shows. It shows when you read a novel, and you can really feel the characters, you can really feel what they're feeling, and you can feel both the empathy for them and frustration in some cases. So let's talk about your characters right off the cuff, Zainab and Ahmed, and two unlikely individuals who are sort of thrown together in a way by circumstance, Kismet. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, Ashafina, I didn't mention, but I've got two boys of my own. One's currently 8, I said, and one's 14 years old. And at some point when this project began gaining some momentum, I thought to myself that, this book might live longer than me. It'll be something that they'll eventually want to read, and it'll be a sort of a message for me to leave behind in a very simple way. It'll live longer than me. And so I wanted to show, all in all, that life's not easy. You have to work at it. And at some point, I decided to um, use the characters as, we have millennial I would say that they are very young millennials, Zainab and Ahmed. And mental health is such a it's a buzzword that's flying around, childhood trauma, things like that. And a lesson to my kids was that no matter what you went through in life, you have to, find the positivity. And you have to, the grass is not greener on the other side. You've got to water the grass where you are, to let things, let yeah, let good come of everything. You have to try. You know, it's so it was a lesson, all in all, that I wanted to share with my kids. I think it's a lesson that as a mother you would want your kids to take throughout life. You know, that you have to water the thorns, and inshallah roses will blossom. You can't give up too easily. You know, this the current generation, I feel that their resilience and grit is a little bit lower than past generations, especially when it comes to marriage. You know, the rate of divorce is so high at the moment, and if there's a little bit that I can, in some way help um, people see that if the early days are difficult, if you push through, if it's, obviously I'm not. Obviously there are situations like abusive situations that way, obviously it's necessary, but if it's just personality wise, and you can push through and get to know each other before making harsh decisions, then I think that's a lesson I would like to leave behind as part of my, let's call it, a legacy. And so the characters basically just Shafinas, as you start writing, you don't have all the pieces put together of a puzzle. And this was my very first book. So I wasn't sure at the beginning whether I was doing it the right way. And I realized that, maybe there's no right way. Maybe it's just my way of doing things. And I should just, embrace that and just go with the flow and see where it takes me. And so, Alhamdulillah, it did. The personalities of these two characters, my husband is so sick and tired of hearing of Zainab and Ahmed now, but they've become like my imaginary friends that I talk about all the time. And during writing the book, it was like, oh, what would Zainab do now? What would Ahmed do in this situation? And I was in there with them. And so using their ages, Ahmed is in his late 20s, Zainab is in her early 20s, and so both of them would fall, I would say, very young millennials, or even the next generation. What is it? Gen Z. And they're in this, they're living in this in a world where as I said, their resilience and grit are really tested, especially with, it's basically a sign of the times, I think. And so to give them that, give each of them something that they had to heal from, was something that I really wanted to put in there, to show that everybody, in some way or the other, you and me, we're all healing from something. It might not be the most traumatic thing, but we're all healing from something, and we all have to do and make the best of what we have been served in life in order to move forward positively. And so Ahmed ended up being a very reserved kind of a person, because I would say introverted, because he kept his thoughts to himself, and and often him keeping his thoughts to himself led to some misunderstandings. And but he in that he was also a very independent person, so he thought he knew what he wanted, but he wasn't really sure if what he wanted was what was best for him. And but his independence kept him self-reliant. And he wasn't he's not the kind of person who would openly just seek advice. And I think this speaks to a lot of the younger men in this generation, what we call them, bigger boys. They feel that I'm bringing up one, my 14-year-old. He doesn't like to show any emotion. And he says, Mommy, I think I feel like you're telling me this because I'll tell him a very sad story, and he'll say, Mommy, I feel like you want me to start crying, but I'm not going to start crying. And so I don't know who taught him that, or not me. But I feel that they're growing up in this world where where they feel that they need to keep everything back, bucketed in. And so Ahmed is based on I would say somebody like that. And obviously one of the main parts of his personality is his skepticism towards marriage. And I think that obviously then creates the friction in the novel. And it shows also that he's also healing from his own childhood traumas, or the bad example he had from his parents' marriage, which is so rife in this day and age. With a high rate of divorce, we have children who are dealing with these emotions, and perhaps they are not as open-minded, or they don't know how to deal with it, because some younger children have big emotions that they can't deal with. And so in my small way, if I can teach somebody how to you know um, be more open-minded, then inshallah that would be what I leave behind. And the complete opposite then is Zainab. Very, very compassionate, mashallah, very dedicated to her spirituality. Her upbringing was completely different from Ahmed. She was brought up in a beautiful, loving environment, very spiritually inclined. And I think her resilience throughout the novel um, was was due to her spirituality, her very high levels of spirituality. At every point in the book, whenever there was a difficult period, she would turn to her dua or her zikr or whatever it was. And I think um, this is what we need to teach people to do, that we don't we are living this life, but this dunya was not created for us. We were create I would say the dunya was created for us, but we weren't created for it. We are created for the akhirah. So to look at that bigger picture, you really need to be very resilient and hard skinned, um and your grit needs to be really out there, up there, in order to build that kind of resilience. And so she was also she had some issues growing up, with her mother passing on at a very young age, and having another woman as her mother figure. But I think all in all, from the beginning to the end, we really did see how she she grew as a person. She matured. She embraced a lot of change. And that's another thing that I feel, as women, I think Allah Ta'ala created us in such a way, Shafinaaz, I feel. It's like a theory that I have. Allah Ta'ala created us to be so adaptable and flexible. We are daughters to begin with. And then we are plucked from one environment and married off into another environment, and we adapt and we're flexible. And alhamdulillah, we make a home of it. And in this way, we are so we are taken, we are so, what can I say? Yeah, alhamdulillah, let me stick with adaptability and flexibility. And I think that's our strength as women. And men, on the other hand, they are adaptable, are flexible, but they're much more like emotion um yeah, emotionally stable. As women, we have our monthly ups and downs, but men, alhamdulillah, they are very level headed most of the time. And so I really wanted to show that difference in personalities with our Zainab and our Ahmed in Kismet.
I think in many
Yes.
ways, you got to also look at how women and men are socialized, and so it
Yes.
shows in the characters as well, because that socialization is, we're always meant to think about what we say and how it'll affect the next person, what we do and how it'll affect the next person.
Yes.
Women are
Yes.
socialized from a very young age in that respect, whereas men expect the emotional labor to be sorted. Everything will be done, everything will be handled, and everything will be taken care of. What I appreciated
That's
about
it.
how you presented Ahmed is that yes, he doesn't self-regulate very easily, he does lash out, but he has time to
Yes.
reflect. And I'm hoping that
Yes.
through reading this novel, you'll find that your readers will be able to reflect on their situations as well, because you do bring up a very important point, that is, we do have a lot more breakdown in marriages currently. And it's overwhelming, because do we have the tools to deal with it? Do our children have the tools to deal with it? Children make meaning from these situations in different ways. I've read some
Yes.
reports where, they talk about how previous past experiences affect the next generation, and the likelihood of there being more breakdown in marriages because it's almost normalized. What do we do as a society, and how are children really making sense? Because how the children have read the situation, how Ahmed read his parents' situation, is not necessarily exactly what happened, and he finds it out later without giving away
Yes.
too much. You know,
Yes.
the misunderstandings that are now generational also layer the generational trauma. Comment on some of it, because there's so many themes in your novel. It could keep us here all night, but comment on some of that as well.
Yeah, so like we said, Ahmed had a very traumatic upbringing with regard to the way his parents' marriage, the direction that it took. And I also made mention there of his his grandmother, his mother's mother-in-law, who I I use the, the cliched mother-in-law, um, the cliche that mother-in-laws are bad. Let's just say it as it is, all right? So Ahmed's mother here herself, she grew out of the situation that she was put under as a new bride, and she had some experiences that occurred to her, and then when it was her turn to be the mother-in-law, she did it differently. So I feel that there's, two people can be put into the similar situation, and then they take different things out of it, so
Right.
I'm not saying that all our young boys in this generation who are coming through, coming out of marriages that were not so successful, not everybody will end up in this, what, like Ahmed with his dysregulated emotions and things. But there's so much to speak about the support that a person has, when it comes to getting over these kinds of traumas. And I think we are in a situation these days where mental health is so, spoken about so beautifully, so open-mindedly, very unlike the days of old, where everything was hush hush and pushed under the carpet. And so there have been situations, in society where we have the husband who's not behaving himself, and then his family would just push things under the carpet. And so um, I think it takes society as a whole or at least a very supportive system to be able to help anybody, any child who's come out of a hurtful marriage, or the product of a hurtful marriage, for them to be able to, heal through that, and do better when it's their turn. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answer. I went off on a tangent, didn't I?
No, absolutely. I agree with what you've said. And I think it is a very reflective story, and it will allow people to really reflect through the art of the story, which is the amazing thing that fiction can be. It's not very prescriptive, and I found when I was reading the novel, like I immediately aligned myself with some of the thoughts that Fatima was having towards her daughter-in-law, or
Okay.
or the sister-in-law Zaira, and how they bonded. And so there's that amazing sort of family ties being made here, even while Ahmed is deciding what he's doing with the situation.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's interesting to go with them on each of their journeys through the novel. And I know that a lot of readers will find a lot of resonance with these characters and with these stories as well.
Inshallah. Yeah. While we're well, I think it's a bit off topic, but I just come to me. One of the, Alhamdulillah, the reviews have been mostly positive, and people have loved the writing style, etc., etc. But one of the reviews that really sticks with me, the one that I felt, okay, my job is done. My whatever I had set out to do is now complete. Alhamdulillah. Somebody sent me this privately, and it was, it really touched me at the time. She says, upon reading the novel 3 times within the month of purchasing it, every single time I considered going into niqab. That is how much your book has touched the lives of the Muslimah. And when I read that, I thought, no matter what happens next, Alhamdulillah, for me, that's my benchmark of success. Alhamdulillah, to have somebody read the book and think happy thoughts, good thoughts, and up their spiritual level, even if it was just a notch. And I make dua for that sister, that she makes the right decision that's right for her. So I think the whole spiritual aspect of the book was very, very important for me to put through.
And I picked up on that because there's often these cases where um, your protagonist is in a tight spot, in a tough situation, and she immediately, prays her istikhara, resorts to dhikr, she calms herself. So her method of self-regulation is really beautifully spiritual, and it shows that she's had that in her upbringing. Speak to us about some of these elements and how you've placed them so beautifully in the prose.
Um, s- I think that stemmed from the fact that I thought to myself at one point, Wahida, you don't have any daughters, but if you did, how would you like her to have turned out, you know? And what lessons would you have liked her to take through her life? And then I had this lovely blank character called Zainab, who I could, build to my satisfaction, and somebody who is not perfect. She's not perfect. She also has her ups and downs, but the most important, I think, most positive part of her personality is her spirituality. And then it didn't come from nowhere, you know, it came from her upbringing. It came from the fact that her father was a man of the masjid. It came from the fact that he brought her up in a kind of a cocoon. So to speak, didn't hold her back, because she was able to study whatever she wanted, um, but through all of that, and she was still able to keep and hold on to her 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 spiritual and her high spiritual levels. And it's something that I think, as a Muslima, I strive towards. It's something that I also, obviously not perfectly, but it's something that I try to take example from Zainab, considering that I created her as a character, but still take lessons from her, because she sort of just went off on her own, and she became had a eventually got a life of her own, and you know how characters often do, right? So it was important for me to share all of this, because, as I said, it was the bottom line was that this was a legacy I wanted to keep for my kids. And if they could also learn that, and I think with boys it's a little bit different from girls, right? But if they could also learn that no matter what happens in life, you always have dua, and nothing is impossible when you have your dua, and when you have Allah Ta'ala on your side. And if you just do good and be good, good things will happen to you. But with the dua, you have to do some action. You can't just sit and make dua and expect things to fall on your lap. You have to also try. So yeah, with Zainab, I think that was the lesson, and that was what I wanted people to take out of that. That with her duaing it, she also did it. She also put action to it, and she was able to attain at the end. And in her own quiet little way, she was able to lead Ahmed onto a different path from what he was initially heading.
No, it was beautifully done, and I think it's a reminder for all of us to be able to find a better way to deal with your situation, no matter what challenges come your way, and to really give your situation a chance. We are so forgiving when we have these altercations, perhaps with with a immediate family member like a sibling, because you kind of know you're stuck and you have these ways of dealing. So extend that same tolerance, kindness towards your spouse, and inshallah, there'll be a better way forward. Waheeda, it was wonderful to have this chance to chat to you, to hear about your process writing this novel. And inshallah, we wish you everything of the best with the future of the novel, with your future writings. What can we hope to see from your pen in the future, and where to from here?
Inshallah, Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Shafinaaz, for giving me the opportunity. I do have, at the end of Kismet, I did put a little teaser of what's to come. It is still a way to go with that one, but inshallah, at some point next year, a date has not yet been set, but inshallah, the next one will be out soon. I don't want to lose, momentum or anything, but I do have a busy schedule, and so the time, that's my biggest challenge, is to get time for writing. But no, inshallah,
Inshallah.
people will hear from me. And can I just throw in my handles? If anybody wants to find out more or anything, they can follow me on social media. It's at Waheeda_Joosab, and links to or my website, etc., are all over there. Inshallah.
And hopefully, books can be gotten directly through you as well, inshallah. So, once again,
Sure.
Jazakallah khair for giving us your time, and Alhamdulillah for the opportunity to hear your process. And we wish you everything of the best, inshallah.
Thank you,
And
Shafinaaz.
And so there you have it from this week's edition of Book Bites. We spoke to Waheeda Joosab about a novel, Kismet. And until next weekend, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.